Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Welcome to Newpub Talk, where we talk about publishing industry, music industry often too, just creative industries in general, as well as whatever happens to be going on during the day or whatever you guys want to talk about. It's an audience-driven show, so I am happy to answer questions or respond to comments, whatever y'all want it to be. So, any interesting news for the day or the week? One interesting thing, which is the Department of Justice coming out and accusing some kind of startup right-wing media, quote, right-wing media company, including like Lauren Chin, of being taking money from some Russians, I guess. And this is one of these things where I tell people, like, take this stuff with a grain of salt and just wait on it, because I have been personally accused of being a Russian asset because I basically said mean things about Star Wars. So if I could be a Russian asset, and I've never gotten a dime from Russia, I promise you that. I have known some Russians because I've been in the music business, so most of the Russians I know have been either pianists or like in the metal scene, right? I've never taken money from Russians, but because I was critical of Star Wars and was pretty early on that, I guess, I was accused of being like a Russian bot or a Russian asset. Yes, I'm a robot. But anyway, so take that with a grain of salt. And also keep in mind, these are the people who have been relentlessly campaigning for people to not vote for Trump because he's not pro-life enough. So it's an interesting thing. It intersects my sphere because of accusations that have happened in the past, because of criticisms that I've made against mega corporate IPs. You have criticized the mega corporate American IPs. You must be getting paid by Russia, which is always a funny one. Yes, Concord. Let's talk about Concord, because that was a great one. Cool looking controller. The controller was really cool looking. Then we saw the game and it looked like dog dookie. More importantly, even the stuff that didn't look like dog dookie looked silly. And the game wasn't good enough to enter a really crowded genre, which is the hero shooter genre. And it's a live service genre, which means for people to play your game, they have to quit playing the old game. So they have to stop playing Overwatch, and they have to start playing your game. And Concord just was not interesting enough for virtually anyone to do it. I think I saw the peak numbers on Steam were like less than 700. For a $200 million game, that's a really big disappointment. So now they're taking it offline starting this Friday. It's going away. Now, will it come back as a free-to-play game? I don't know. A good businessman would try to weigh the options, because if it's possible, you could destroy the live service game and write it off on your taxes the way you would write off destroyed books. This all comes back to like a Supreme Court decision regarding old stock with the Thor power tool company. We could talk about that in a minute. But if you could write it off on your taxes, that could be very advantageous if you know it's going to take you a really long time to see an ROI. And while you are trying to get that ROI, you're having to maintain servers. It's a live service game. If it was just a game that you could come out with and it didn't sell well, eventually you could sell enough copies to maybe pay for it, right? Somewhere down the line, it's taken a long time to get into the black on it. But with the live service game, you could possibly never enter the black because there's an ongoing cost of service. It costs money to keep the servers online. So if they take it down, they could do what Disney did with Willow, what they are probably going to do with the Acolyte, which is to write it off as a loss. It's destroyed inventory. It's inventory that's been destroyed. So because it's destroyed inventory, you can write it off on your taxes. So they'll write it off as destroyed inventory, and that'll be the end of Concord. And what we'll be left with were some really cool looking controllers that looked like they had a really cool design from what looked like 1981 or 1982 to me, in a good way. So that could be your souvenir for the massive Concord debacle. Now, could it come back as a free-to-play game? Nothing's off the table, but if I were a Sony executive and I were trying to maybe weigh all of my options, I might really look at the tax write-off. Like, we could write off $100 million on our taxes in a recession year? Let's do that. Right. So, yeah. Adrian says, I've never had something fail as hard, seen something fail as hard as Concord. It's kind of amazing. Yeah. It will have lasted 2 weeks as a live game. Now people are like, how did they do this? It took 8 years to develop this. Is like, things happen on their own momentum. When they thought of it, so let's go backwards 8 years. 2016, Overwatch 1 was still like a thing that people played, right? So you're looking at it and you're like, okay, here is a really good genre to get into. Why? Well, it's a live service genre, which means we can keep making money forever on it. We could just be charging tons of money. Because when people are thinking about monetization, dollar signs fill up their eyes when they start thinking about World of Warcraft circa 2010, which was just printing money. Or their eyes are blinking when they're like, oh, you know, Yoshi P's making all this money with Final Fantasy 14 or this live service game, right? Without really thinking about how live service games work. Like what I said is that with a live service game, it's really hard to grow the pie of the genre. That is, most of the time you're cannibalizing the pie. You're trying to take customers from other people's products because they'll only play one of those games at a time. They'll play Concord only if they can stop playing Overwatch and if they feel compelled to it, like they don't want to play Overwatch anymore, or they stop playing it at some point. Right? It's just wasn't an exciting game. It didn't look good, and it didn't really have anything special to offer in terms of gameplay that would make anybody want to quit their current game. So if you go back to 2016 to 2020, yeah, it would be easy to say, oh, well, we got to do this. It's kind of like if you were like looking at World of Warcraft in 2009, 2010, you're like, we got to do an MMO. And you take 8 years to develop it, and 2018 comes around. And it's like, you know, you took 8 years for that, and then maybe that genre has not really grown, right? You keep thinking, well, okay, World of Warcraft, line goes up, right? We keep talking about line goes up. Line goes up to 10 million. Well, obviously they'll be at 20 million in 8 years, and we could be part of that. It's like, nope. Line goes down, everyone quit the genre, right? People don't play MMOs like they used to. You know? So anyway, yeah, Concord will be an interesting example, I think, to look at for the gaming industry, for how you can, and once you get the development going, like 8 years of development, can you pull the plug? No, you have to kind of finish it off and see what you can do because of that sunk cost. It's called the sunk cost fallacy, but if you're looking at it as an executive, it's like, no, we already put $100 million in this. You guys have to finish the product. Like, we have to see if there's an ROI out there somewhere for this product. And then there isn't. So what do you do? I don't know, man. I would say my expectation is they're going to try to write it off as destroyed inventory. They'll write it off on their taxes at a loss. And destroy the discs. Bury them. Whatever it is. Yeah. Hello, comrades. Yeah, Concord's the one with the bootleg Guardians of the Galaxy aesthetic with like weird purple hair and stuff. That's a good way to describe it. Doesn't look at all like something cool from 1982. It's just, you know, Concord is why they appropriate existing IPs of wokeism, because they'd otherwise flop. So that's a good example, right? Why not make a new one? Well, it flops. Why does it flop? Well, because you're incapable of designing beautiful things. You refuse to design beautiful things. That could be an option. So it's ugly looking. And frankly, graphics do matter in video games. They matter a lot. And if you're going to be playing a game over the long term, it is really going to matter because you're looking at that for a long period of time. That's not everything. Not everything is. And when we talk about graphics, most people think, and I think a lot of people in the industry think, fidelity, realism. How realistic can we make it? Can we make the hair on the arm? Can we see the hair on the arm? Right? That's what they're thinking in terms of graphics, rather than beauty. Like, how do I make a thing beautiful looking? Right now in the East, they don't seem to have forgotten that, right? Like the characters from Final Fantasy 14 and Final Fantasy 16 too, at least if they're not the NPCs look okay, but like the main characters look good. Right? That Stellar Blade, that Korean game, was it Korean? It looks good. The Chinese games, all the characters look really good. They know that you need to make something beautiful for people to look at. People want to admire beauty. Just because it's high fidelity doesn't mean it's beautiful. And you see that with the new Star Wars Outlaws, which apparently is flopping and driving down Ubisoft stock, right? They took a good-looking model, uglified her in the game, and then they're wondering why no one wants to look at her. Well, she's not beautiful to look at in the way that you drew her. So how do you fix that? Well, they're just bigots because they want women to look good. Maybe, okay, but you're trying to sell them something, and they have the option to not buy it, and so they're going to take that option. It's kind of backwards thinking, or I called it Bolshevik marketing. Bolshevik marketing is where you make a product that you think people ought to want, and then you try to find a way to force them to buy it. If in the case of like the USSR, or more often people, if they don't have an option, will buy it. So like shoes in the USSR are not badly made. They were not badly made, but they were designed by people, by a committee to be like, these are the kinds of shoes people ought to want. They ought to have these because they're durable and blah, blah, blah. And people are like, they're ugly and they're uncomfortable, but yeah, they don't wear out. But I can't buy other shoes, so I guess I'll wear them. Whereas like Bolshevik marketing in a capitalist system is like, well, you ought to like this fat Rose Tico doll. And it's like, I don't want that, and I'm not going to spend my money on it. It's like, but you ought to like it. This is something people ought to like. They ought to like realistic-looking Barbies. Well, they don't. Sorry, they don't like them. Doesn't work that way. So I call it Bolshevik marketing, and this is a great example of it. It's like people ought to like these mannish character models. It's like, turns out they don't, and they'll just not buy the game. So what are you going to do? Kind of circling back around to Concord, one of the reasons that I think they made a hero shooter is they were looking at Overwatch in the mid-2000s. I kind of jumped over this. Sony goes back and looks at Overwatch 8 years ago, and they're like, wow, this is a game that can make a lot of money while having virtually no content. It's the same thing with League of Legends. It's why would you want to be in the MOBA space? Because you can sell skins that require almost no labor to make, and you can sell them for a lot of money. You can have just a few maps, right? This is like Overwatch was like half of a map pack for Unreal Tournament 3, right? Unreal Tournament 3 had like thousands of custom maps that you could play that were better and more interesting than any of the stuff you'll play now. Why don't we go back and play Unreal 3? It's like, because that's not the hot game and I can't play it on my PS4. That's why. Unreal Tournament 3 still has like way more fun multiplayer than most modern shooters. It just does. And it has tons of custom sets, custom maps, whatever you want, right? So you don't have to do a whole lot of work if you're looking at it from the outside. Right? You look at it like, oh, I don't have to do that many maps. I can just design some characters and then just sell skins. Just sell costumes for the characters. We're going to print money. Versus looking at something like a full MMO where, like Final Fantasy 14, where it's like you have to have someone make all of these zones. You have to have someone make all of these monsters. You have to someone make all these cutscenes, program all of these, and script all of these different encounters, and all. It's a lot of work. Not to undersell Overwatch, it's a lot of work probably to balance things and to do that initial design work. But if you're looking from the outside in, you realize like it's a game with very little content that is popular. That's ideal. Game with a low content game where we can sell a lot of things. That's why they love like the little mobile games, right? The gacha games. There you go. Because it's just a low content thing, right? Or like whatever. Pick. Oh, we're gonna do a bunch of pull of characters. Here's the swimsuit variant of this character. You just like hire an artist to draw her in a swimsuit, or like make a swimsuit model for Genshin Impact or something, whatever. And then you sell that. You basically sell that as a gambling prize. Print money. The problem is that like Genshin Impact, for example, is a fun game. So people are playing it and they like the characters and the characters look good, and they just kind of forgot that when they made Concord. They're like, oh, we'll make a fat character so that people feel represented. It's like, people don't want to look at her. No one wants to play the fat character. Why? Because they don't want to see themselves as fat. This is part of it, right? Because you're kind of doing an avatar thing. But really, it's that they just don't like to look at fat humans. I'm sorry. Like, if that offends you, then you're a Bolshevik, probably, and trying to Bolshevik market me. You ought to like every body type. I ought to like many things. I ought to like Brussels sprouts and broccoli, but I hate them. Sorry, can't make me eat them. But yes, to Ron Master's point, yeah, they appropriate other IPs, Star Wars Outlaws, because that's the only way that they can sell things. If they make a new one that's woke, if they make a new one with their concept designs, with their fat, ugly characters, people won't buy it. That's all. If it were to return to as a free-to-play title, it'd need a total visual and narrative overhaul to distance itself as a new IP. Yeah. Well, it would definitely need a visual overhaul, right? You know, and the other thing is, like, you could always give people the option to, like, make their own characters or something in a shooter. It's possible. But, see, they want a hero shooter where you can sell skins. That's their whole monetization strategy, right? They just, like, maybe we could sell them... We'll charge $40 up front and charge them for skins. We'll do Overwatch, but better. It's like, yeah, but Overwatch had a lot of interesting-looking characters, even if some of them were kind of silly, right? And I'm not a fan of Overwatch, personally. I don't like it. Overwatch itself isn't doing all that well. Yes, now imagine going back to 2016 though, and they were probably like, "Yeah, we're gonna make all kinds of money." Every time I see it in gaming news, it's something bad. At least they have hot characters. Yeah, Blizzard did some of the worst decisions ever in Overwatch. They destroyed their original game and replaced it with a free version. So everybody who bought it just was like, okay. And you know, the new version is apparently not as good as the old version, but you can't access the game that you played. Anyway, but it's still full of like LGBT. They made Tracer gay. People were upset that Tracer had like a victory scene with her butt, like you'd see her butt, and it's not like a big butt. It's like a flat white girl ass, but they're like, it's sexualization. It's like, human beings are sexual. That's part of beauty, actually, is encountering the sexuality of the character. If you see Michelangelo's David, it's not merely a body, right? It's a male body, and so it is actually communicating things about the sex of the subject, not just his form, but what that form means, right? David is not fat; he's lean and muscular and beautifully proportioned, with a well-proportioned face. He's intended to look really beautiful. What is male beauty pointing towards? It's pointing towards sexual virility and all kinds of things like that. He's not some weak, skinny guy with low test. He's like a high test athlete. That's what you see in Michelangelo's David. He's supposed to be, like, we throw the word erotic around too much sometimes to where we lose sight of what it means. He's supposed to be a desirable body type. Eros is like a desire, but, it's okay to look at that and admire the beauty, and it doesn't mean that you're like a porn head for understanding that there's a sexuality to a character. We get too locked into like boobs means I want sex now kind of thing. Like this pornographic response that people have to anything that's beautiful. I don't know, that's probably a problem with our modern culture, is like that kind of response. Not crazy about it, right? I don't know how to fix it. I'd imagine that people who only want hot characters defected to Genshin. Genshin's not exactly a hero shooter, but it's pretty fun. And it has a great aesthetic, and it looks good. And it has a story that people care about too. The Overwatch 34 is doing heavy lifting at this point. It really is. I saw the designs of the characters from Concord. How nobody stopped to point out how lame they were over 8 years of development the game had is beyond me. Yeah, and if you're a director and you look at it, it's like, we should have this fat character for representation. I'm like, I looked at the fat character, I think, and I was like, maybe you could make a cute chubby girl. I'm pretty sure Overwatch has one, right? But they just didn't even do that. They're like, no, you ought to like, and this is I've made this point before, and sometimes it upsets people. But one of the things you notice about the people trying to challenge beauty standards is they still want the hot guy with abs. It's a fat feminist, and she's like, people need to like all body types in your porn brain if you don't. And then it's like, well, do you want this fat nerd over here with a neck beard? And do you think that should be attractive? No! What she wants is the guy with abs to lower his standards so that she can sleep with a hot guy. She wants a hot guy. She wants to gaslight hot guys into being attracted to her, and it doesn't really work, I think. But I think that's the motivation. That's the motivation that I see. Right? It would be the same as like a bunch of men got together and be like, women, you need to stop wanting abs and money. Want poor fat guys, please. Be less misandronistic or whatever. They'd be like, that's stupid. You guys should just improve yourselves. That would be the feminist response. Black Myth Wukong is about a humanoid monkey man fighting animal monsters, and everyone, including the monkey man, looks good. The monkey man's more attractive than the characters from Concord. What's the other one we looked at last week too? Was just like really stupid. I already forgot it, which is probably a good thing. I saw a game I want to play called like Let's Escape from the Backrooms. I was like, man, I want to play this game. I looked at it and it's like, it looks like you're just running through empty like hotel hallways. I'm like, that's creepy. Very liminal, right? I would like to play that. So I might get that. It's an early access game. Maybe I'll stream it. Something that's actually like an original approach to gaming that uses like weird internet ideas. I don't know. It'd be nice if everyone liked the things I like, but that's not reality. Actually, I don't think it would be nice. I think we would lose our sense of individual taste. Like part of the way we define ourselves is our taste in things. It shouldn't be all of it, but that's a big problem with my generation is like the definition of the self according to what you like. I'm a metalhead. Like that's my identity. I'm a metalhead. I like science fiction. It's like, well, you're more than the things you like. Yeah, League of Legends has had one map for its main mode that has barely changed for years. I haven't played it in years, but yeah, like Defense of the Ancients, Dota stuff, like it's really limited in terms of content, and it's all about the PvP emerging things, you know? The funny thing is they actually had a possible up on Overwatch. If they included some single-player content or PvE, then maybe there would have been an appeal there, yeah. So then we're back to the idea, so do you need a campaign in a Call of Duty game? This was a debate 8-10 years ago because people didn't really buy Call of Duty for the campaign. They were buying a Call of Duty game every year because they wanted to be in the multiplayer. They wanted to be in the mix for the multiplayer ladders and all that kind of stuff. So it's weird that there's been kind of a promise of return. I think they did this with Overwatch. Like, we're going to have a PvE campaign. Yeah, that would enhance the value for sure. It's the main reason I wouldn't buy Overwatch is like, I don't, you know, this doesn't scratch an itch I have. I'm not like needing more Team Fortress 2, even if it's better than Team Fortress 2. I just don't need that. I don't need more Unreal Tournament 3 or I'd still be playing it, right? It's just not, and it's not an interesting kind of setup to me. I played it a little bit, but, you know, not interesting to me. You know. But yeah, the campaign kind of pulls the product together. It gives a permanent value to the game as well. Because when they take the servers offline for Overwatch, it's gone forever. I saw that they were taking down, this is a mobile game, but they were taking down the servers for Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, which is another gachapon game with like a pixel art aesthetic. You know, no one will get to play that. All that effort will just disappear like tears in the rain when they take the servers offline. Whereas Call of Duty 4, you can still play that campaign today, and it's good, and you can still have a good time playing that game. The campaign makes the game have a permanent sense of identity and place in things. And that good campaign also teaches you how to play and makes you excited to play the multiplayer. So having just multiplayer without the campaign, even Unreal Tournament 3 has a campaign that I played through. And I haven't played through it in years, but they have it. Right? That campaign pulls things together. It makes it seem like a permanent product, a product that you can buy 20 years after the fact, and it'll still be what it is. It still exists as a thing. Oh, Mike Browning, good to see you again. Awesome. Do you think the mid-generation refresh with the PS5 Pro is a good business idea? The price of the base PS5 just went up again in Japan. I'm not sure who the target audience is for PS5 Pro. So I think it's a bad idea, but I'm trying to think maybe about their ideas behind it. And so the reason I don't think it's a really good idea is that when we look at the audience, I think most of the people who are excited about the PS5 have bought one. And people who haven't bought one, maybe there's people waiting for the PS5 Pro, but I don't know who they are. I think a lot of people are not running a setup where they're even really getting everything they want out of the PS5. So, or everything that they can tell out of the PS5. In other words, like the PS4 was kind of good enough, and the PS5 is good enough. Like, I love my PS5. It gets a ton of use. It is the only gaming... It's the gaming machine which supplanted the Wii U as like the thing that we used to play games in the house. The PS4 was like pretty much a Blu-ray player and some games that I played on it for however long we had it. The Nintendo Switch was like a Super Mario Odyssey. The kids didn't care about any of the other games on it. They liked the Wii U. Yoshi's Woolly World, Super Mario 3D World, Donkey Kong, all the great games that are on the Switch were actually originally on the Wii U. But when the PS5 came out, suddenly there were games my kids wanted to play, like the Sackboy games and those sorts of things. And lots of the indie games. We buy a lot of indie games. We'd like to play them on the PS5. It's a great experience. There's a lot of co-op indie games that are really fun to play with the kids. So I look at it, I'm like, the PS5 Pro seems kind of badly timed. It's coming out kind of at an appropriate time for a mid-generation kind of refresh, but it's also coming out in a recession, and it's coming out in a time and place where it's like we haven't really saturated things with the PS5 yet. I mean, the Nintendo Switch still hasn't had a refresh, other than the oh no, that's true, they had the OLED. There's the OLED Switch, but they didn't have like a Switch, new Nintendo Switch, like they did a new Nintendo 3DS. So I just think that like the hardware, the increase you're going to get in hardware, is it going to make a big enough difference for anyone to buy it? And my guess would be probably not. Like, most consumers will probably not be like, oh, I need that extra power. I probably would, but I'm an enthusiast. And I have to think about normies versus people like me that are really into gaming. Is that, for me, a PS5 Pro, it's like, I got to look at my budget and see if I can get one. Why would you buy a PS5 Pro, Stu? You're stupid. Like, there's no games for the PS5. It's like, dude, there's a ton of games for the PS5. There's a shit ton of games. But, you know, I'm an enthusiast. I'm not like regular people who are still okay just like playing Dark Souls 3 or whatever on their PS4. I like to be on the cutting edge. It's just kind of it's my hobby. It's where my enthusiasm is, that and like guitars, right? I love, if I can find a cool new guitar, trade for it, like that gets me so excited. And I just get so energized by that. Same thing with gaming hardware. A new piece of gaming hardware gets me really energized to like play games and figure out what it can do. And my son likes to share that, and my daughter too. They like to really share in that with me. So we have a lot of fun with it, you know. So I'm not sure who the target audience is for the PS5 Pro. I think my theory right now for what Microsoft and Sony are doing as a business strategy is, I think they understand that what you need to do is you need to have the Nintendo strategy just at a big enough scale. That's what Microsoft is doing. Why are they buying all the studios? Because they know that one of the ways that Nintendo makes a lot of money is they make money on both ends. They sell the hardware. They make a profit on the hardware, which is hard if you're trying to be cutting edge. And then they keep all of the sales of the software, right? So yeah, there's tons of third-party software on the Switch, but a lot of people buy Nintendo consoles for the first-party games because they want to play Zelda and Mario and that kind of stuff. And Nintendo gets to keep all that money. So if you can publish on your own platform your game, you get to keep all the money. Now, Concord was a big flop, but I don't think Sony was wrong to think like this is a way for us to increase our profits, is to make the game ourselves. I think they've known that. The problem is, I think they're just making games that people are not as interested in because they're just not as good as Mario games, right? They're just not as good. They're not as fun. So, yeah, the other question with the PS5 Pro is like, is it enough of a hardware upgrade that they're making money on the hardware? Are they going to make money on the hardware? And their strategy going forward might be PlayStation is a whole format, and like every generation is going to play like everything backwards to the PS4 and maybe beyond with emulation. So I think that's next on the corner too, is like PS3 emulation on the PS5 Pro. Now all of a sudden you could play every PlayStation game on your PS5 Pro. That would be a big sell to me. Again, I'm an enthusiast though, so I don't know if regular people would be like, it's worth it for me to get a PS5 Pro. Like I would actually really seriously consider it for all the things that I do, which is like, yeah, I'd like to play. I want to go back and play Demon's Souls again, the remake, which is actually a good remake, in my opinion. But like, yeah, I'd really like to do it at 120 FPS, where it's like that action is really smooth and it has all the ray tracing garbage and stuff, right? You know, it'd be cool to play the full new hyped up version of Final Fantasy XIV on it. Of course, I have a really good PC to do that, so it's not that big a deal, you know. So yeah, I'm not sure who the target audience is. I'm not sure too many people who are playing their PS5 and they're like, it's not enough power. This game is not running good enough. Because a lot of games have like a performance mode, and I always turn that on. Like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I played on graphics mode for like half an hour just to really see it, and then you put back on performance mode, you're like, wow, the game looks 100 times better. Why? Because you can see the things that are moving. When you're going at like 20 FPS, everything looks jittery. You can't, even though it's rendering things at high detail, things are in motion. So 60 FPS looks way better, even if it's not as high a detail, or if you don't have ray tracing or something. Most gamers just don't care about ray tracing. They can't even see it. They don't know what it looks like. They're not an enthusiast. They're a normie. Anyway, that's my rant on that. So I'm not sure who the target audience would be. People like me, but even people like me are hurting. I'm not hurting financially. Like, I'm not in a bad strait, but like my wife and I are trying to put a ton of money into savings, which doesn't leave that much to just like buy PS5s. So I may have to like make a deal with myself that it's like, I gotta sell something if I want a PS5 Pro, right? I gotta sell some guns or something, you know. I gotta get rid of some of those. I gotta get rid of, like, gotta thin the herd somewhere. Sell a guitar, sell a gun, sell a couple guns. Rockfuel, thank you for following me since I was playing flamenco. I don't usually play flamenco anymore. I can still play some whatever compás you want. I can't forget that kind of stuff. I don't have a lot of falsetto stuff still memorized. But I can improvise it. Flamenco is an interesting scene. It turned out to be like one of the most racist scenes I've ever been involved with. It's like being, if you're not, and the thing is, it's not even really originally gypsy music, but if you're not Gitano, then like, it's like being a white rapper. Just don't want to deal with it after a while. My skin's too light. I don't look like a gypsy. I don't look Romani. Even though I am part Native American. Right. I'm pretty pale for one, right? My dad wasn't. He was a lot darker skinned, but you know, genes are weird. You marry an Irish woman. I'd be willing to try Genshin Impact if the Chinese government didn't have its tendrils all over it like it does with every Chinese thing. Yeah, well, you gotta accept that if you want to play it. It's a fun game. I've played it. I've streamed it. We could play it right now, maybe. Actually, I don't have it installed. But it's a really fun game. It just is. It's a fun game. It says a lot about the quality of the game that people are willing to do a gacha game and put up with all the crap to play it. Well, Captain Planet was woke. Why isn't that being rebooted? It was like the early woke, right? Like Ted Turner personally wanted to make Captain Planet, but it put all kinds of stupid ideas in people's heads that are still around and like actively kind of reconfirmed in all kinds of things. One of them is that like one of the dumbest ideas that just keeps popping up is that your trash ends up in the ocean. The ocean has trash in it, and therefore you are responsible. Actually, no. If you put your garbage in the garbage, the waste management company takes it to a landfill where they bury it. Right? They don't throw it in the ocean. The trash that's in the ocean, at least like on the Pacific coast, is all from Latin America. And if it's in the Gulf Coast, it's pretty much all from like the Caribbean. None of it's from the United States. So your trash is not going into the ocean. Doesn't mean trash in the ocean is not a problem, but you don't need to feel personally guilty about like, oh, I have to snip. I still see people doing this. Like they have the, the 6-pack, the little plastic rings, and they're snipping those so they don't get caught on fish. I'm like, that's not going on a fish. It's going into the landfill. You live in Omaha, Nebraska. There's no way that is going into the ocean ever. Or a lake. It's going to a landfill. That's how trash works. Like waste management is a whole thing here, but the waste management company doesn't dump your garbage in the ocean. No, that's something that tends to happen with Latin American countries, or on the very outside, somebody at the beach who doesn't clean up their trash and like the tide washes it away. Pick up your trash on the beach, please. That would be very nice. We don't want our beaches to be full of garbage. But Captain Planet had this, oh, these poor turtles are caught. It's like, if only people would think twice about having a 6-pack and cutting the rings. That's not going in the ocean, guys. One person complained about Tracer's butt. That event always left a bitter taste in my mouth. And they got rid of it. They got rid of that little pose, the little Tracer pose. I think it was still in beta back then. Did you just assume the gender of that statue? Yes. I was trying to speak gaming to a friend who seemed not so interested in what I learned about fantasy genres from you. He's playing shooters when I see him, which is the more popular. Shooters are still pretty popular. They're still very popular. They've been like one of the main game genres since the 90s. It's not a response to perceived pornography, though. It's the ideological response of the male gaze. It's basically a female supremacist response. It's always focused in on female characters. Yeah. They probably did it. It was probably an emperor has no clothes situation. Everyone knew the truth but spoke the lie because they were afraid of the pushback. Desport. That's the game that I forgot about already. What I don't get is game developers will still hire an attractive woman as a face model, then proceed to make them ugly. Yes. What is that? Now, part of it, just to play the devil's advocate, part of it actually could be ray tracing. Yeah. So the thing is that when you light things realistically, people are not as attractive as they are in the studio with like very nice, soft front lighting that like completely covers their face. Like I could put in let me put on a fill light here just to show you what I mean, right? Here, let me turn on this fill light. I don't usually use this for streaming, but here it is. Ooh, that's very bright fill light. Let's turn that down a bit. This is also my light I use to light up my pedal board when I'm doing stuff. All right, so here's a soft fill light. Now I have shadows behind me. You just ignore those, right? My face is fairly evenly lit. You can still see like might have some pimples and stuff, but I don't look too bad. If we start giving ourselves like realistic lighting, all of a sudden I start to look like a Dick Tracy character. I'm like, yeah. I got big bags under my eyes all of a sudden, and like, or light me from like the side and underneath, and then all of a sudden I'm really not very attractive compared to like a nice, well-constructed shot. So when we're photographing models, we light them a certain way to even their skin tone out. That's one of the ways that you can add age to a character is just adding more lines. I learned that from Jesse White, having him on the show. He's a great artist. He will tell you things like that, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. Why do like some of these comic characters from the 90s always look like old men? It's because they like draw little crow's feet and like they're just doing hashes all over the place, and it makes them look old. The fewer lines you draw, the younger the person looks. So if you can, in order to minimize the bags, you do a fill light and a main light, and it'll just make it. I only slept like 4 hours last night because my daughter was up all night. But it'll even that out. If I start doing like down lighting, you're like, man, this dude looks serious, right? So lighting matters. Lighting matters quite a bit. When you have ray tracing and you have real light sources, it's gonna make the model look off. So believe it or not, I think you may have to like beautify characters more than you otherwise would, and you really have to make sure features are rather soft on the actual 3D model in order for them to look beautiful in all kinds of realistic light. You really have to make sure they don't look too realistic, because then it won't be as attractive. just playing the devil's advocate on that kind of matters. Ray tracing can make things look less beautiful than they otherwise would be. Okay, just something to think about, some food for thought, I guess. Moving this camera all around. Okay. Yeah, Ashley from Resident Evil 4 and that girl from Star Wars Outlaws. Yeah, Resident Evil 4. That model really looks like that. She's actually that pretty. You can look her up. She actually does look like that. I'm gonna turn that fill light back on. That made me look pretty good. Yeah. We'll put it over here. I can move it, slide it down a little bit. Kind of there. There we go. That's pretty good. I'm gonna turn it down. It's a little too bright. A little too bright for a fill light. Let's try. There we go. All right. So yeah. Yeah, she actually looks like that. She's gorgeous. Want to have uglier models outright? They did that with Dragon Age Inquisition. They just made the models ugly. Everyone's ugly. Oh, what was your romance option? I didn't have one because I thought everyone was ugly. And I borderline wanted to make my character gay as a result. And then I played a female character and was like, all the dudes look ugly too. Ain't none of them good enough for my elf princess. Comrade, did you just express an opinion that differs from the States? To the gulag! Nobody cares about single-player Call of Duty, just like nobody cares about the main quest in Skyrim. Well, people do care about that, so, I mean, you're wrong. But, like, the main thing is that the campaign gives the game identity and makes it worth existing after the year that it comes out. So this was often a question, like, why not have Call of Duty with no single player? The answer is it will lose any sense to exist after that first year. Whereas you can sell it for $10 as a campaign with maybe a couple. There's still like little multiplayer things a couple years afterwards, but you can sell it at a discount and continue to make money on it by having that campaign. People didn't buy it for the campaign. Hey. My friends didn't usually buy it. They were like, I'm going to play this campaign. They're like, why, dude? Why can't I just skip it? I'm like, eventually I think they did let you skip it, but yeah. I think the older campaigns for Call of Duty were amazing too, Zen I think they were great. I thought a lot of them were great. I think they did a really good job. But over time, once those 7th generation of consoles like PS3, Xbox 360, once online play really started to take off with those, the emphasis became the multiplayer. Multiplayer, yeah, good to see you, Mike. Multiplayer without campaign can work if you're going to go for a very cheap game like Battlefield. Otherwise, single player needs to be part of the package. Yeah. Recession, soon to be depression. So anyway, I'll make a little point here about recessions and depressions because these are words that have a technical economics meaning, and they also have a deeper common use meaning that our word cells in various pieces of this world will exploit. So a recession is like I think it's 3/4 of negative economic growth. What the hell does that mean? Well, there's these things that we track to see, is GDP going up? No, it's going down for 3/4 in a row. That's a recession. So you created like a technical way to measure it. That's the word recession. The economy recedes. A depression is actually just a low, right? It's just that there's a flat economic, a decrease, a recession, and then flat economic growth for a certain amount of time. If you go back and look at the way they tracked depressions back in, like, say, the 19th century, you'll see that they were far less profound and much shorter than our mere recessions are today. But the word depression became so powerful after the Great Depression that people just stopped using it. So we had a Great Depression of our own. Really, the entire Obama administration almost was a very long and protracted depression, an economic stagnation after a large contraction of the economy. Bubbles burst, people lost their savings. Like, it was a big deal. And I experienced it. It was an experience too, which is like, I used to gig 4 nights a week. Everywhere that I gigged closed within like 6 months. I had to leave town because I couldn't afford to live there. And then everything just like collapsed. The entire music live performance industry for me collapsed in 2008. So the recording industry collapsed in 2000, but the like live performance as a way to make money just like blew. It just got destroyed for anyone other than a touring act by 2008. And now even touring acts can't make any money, right? The music industry really sucks. But that was a depression, but people don't want to call it that because that's scary. But that's technically what it would be. It would be so many quarters. I don't remember, like so many quarters of not any economic growth. Like 3 quarters or something like that, or like less than 1%. I don't remember the exact. But what'll happen is that you'll say we're experiencing a recession, and then you'll have someone be like, "No, we're not," because I'm going to now use the technical definition for recession, which our GDP went up because we inflated the currency by 30%. Wait a minute, like GDP going up because if GDP goes up 2% and you've increased the number of dollars by 20%, that's not 2% growth. Because the thing which you're measuring it with, you've increased the number of, right? You've actually had what would really be, if you adjust it, like negative economic growth. People are aware of this. They're like, I'm losing business and things cost more. This is a recession. Or we're going to be technical and say, according to these very certain measurements, it's not. Why'd you raise interest rates then? No reason. Government and mainstream media says the economy is doing better than ever. Now, pretty much like everything's more expensive that you would use, especially like groceries. Our grocery bill was like $400. It's like $800 for like Costco. In a world where cross-platform gaming is increasingly common, does it make sense to try and copy the Nintendo strategy? I think so. Because on your platform, you make all of it. And then you can still make money on other platforms too, if you want to. And then let's say your platform does poorly, like Microsoft's Xbox Series X is not doing that great. Well, you can still keep that gaming thing afloat by publishing stuff on other platforms as well. Why is Sony publishing things on the PC? It's like, because they kind of did some looking and they're like, PC players really want to play on the PC and we'll just publish there because they're not going to play on the PS5. So we're just increasing the size of the pie. And we're taking all the stuff. I'm the same way. Can't buy a new... Oops. Why did I do that? Can't buy a new PC parts till the old is gone. Yeah. Sell your hair to get a PS5. I've considered selling the hair. My hair is kind of old and gray now. I don't know if anyone wants it. I used to donate it to charity every so often, so I need to do that again. Has there been any rumors about when the PS6 is coming out? 2028? No, and this is another thing too, is that the increase in hardware power has slowed down a lot, which makes you wonder, like, why have a PS5 Pro if it's like not really that much better? So the increase in power slowed down a lot, and what you get out of that increase in power has plateaued in a big way. It's like an S curve. It's not like a line go up thing. So you had explosive increases in technological power 20 years prior. Now that's slowed off. And then when you do, like you go from the RTX 3090 to the RTX 4090, and you're like, whoa, it's like twice as more powerful. And you look at the graphics and you're like, I'm not seeing where that power's going, right? A normie, at least, doesn't see the graphical fidelity increase. People who are enthusiasts will, right? But it's kind of like, imagine you take a guy down to the gun range and he shoots the rifle and he gets his thing. And he's like, wow, I hit it. It's all in the target. Cool. Man, I'm good at this. And another guy is like, he's comparing two different groups, and the guy's like, why are you, they look the same. And the guy's like, no, well, this one is grouped at 1.5 inches and this one's grouped at 1 3/4. And I'm trying to figure out what I did different. It's like, they look exactly the same to me. It's like, he's not a like expert shooter. An expert shooter would be able to tell you all the different things about the groupings. And like a beginner is just like, well, it just looks like you hit the target a bunch. That's cool. Good for you. I'm hitting the target too. I'm happy. So a normie is just not seeing as much of that extra graphical increase. It just doesn't, it doesn't appeal to them, and it's not apparent to them. And I use my wife as a bit of a guidepost on this, and my kids a little bit. But my wife will look at something and it'll be a really pretty game like on the PC, and she's like, well, that's pretty. Anyway, dinner's ready, right? She appreciates it for half a second, doesn't really care or think that much about it, right? I'll play a game from 2008 and she'll be like, wow, that game's beautiful. And it's like, it is, because the art is beautiful in it, not because the graphics are high fidelity, right there, or the textures are super sharp. It's just the art itself looks good. So, you know, that's the weird thing about the PS5 Pro. Is like, is anyone, like, are normal people going to feel like they need that extra power? Is it going to deliver something special for them? Give them an extra 20 FPS? Are they going to... Enthusiasts might see it, but normal people probably aren't going to see it. I'm Romanian American, and people ask me all the time if that means gypsy. Very unfortunate. Yeah. Say Roma are not from Rome, nor are they from Romania. Roma people are from nowhere. They and everywhere, right? They are transients, according to most Europeans. So like the Roma people, and even then it's because they don't want to say gypsy, gitano, or whatever word you have. It's like a slur. Someone decided that somewhere that's a slur, but gypsy would be like, I'm gitano. It's like, but what gets me is there's all kinds of people who say they're gitano and they're just like, no, you're just a Spaniard. You know, I met a guy who was like, I'm gitano, and I'm like, and he didn't speak Spanish, and he lived in some caves in Andalusia for like 6 months, kind of near some Roma people, and he's like, yes, I'm gitano. Why? Like, why do you need that identity? Just be you, man. Just be you. Trash going into a landfill? I don't know. It sounds like a conspiracy theory to me. I always felt like the six-pack thing was a ritual practice. It is. It's a cargo cult thing. You never really think, like, you're like, TV told me to do this, and it's good to do this, therefore I'll do it. Without really thinking, like, what is this supposed to do? Cutting the six-pack rings. Yeah. I do got a question, though. I read your book, Keys to Being Prolific. Keys to Prolific Creativity. I have a copy of it somewhere. Where is it? It's around here somewhere. And I'm having trouble coming up with a creative process daily routine. Got any advice? Pick a time that you're going to be creative in, wherever you feel peaked. Morning or night, doesn't matter. Just pick a time that's yours and start with an hour. In that hour, just like turn your phone off. Try not to do anything that's not that. The first day you try to sit down to write or whatever you're going to do, you're going to not be good at it because you have to learn how to focus on what you're doing. And just start with that. Just set a time. 30 minutes, an hour, doesn't matter. Try to make it consistent every day so that it's part of your routine. If you can do it for 1 week, try to do it for a month. And if you can do it for a month, then it's easy. It's like going to the gym. Like, it just becomes part of your routine. Brushing your teeth. It's like you do that thing every day. That's going to be the best thing. And if you're too tired in the morning, just kind of know thyself. I'm really tired in the morning. Do it at night. And if you didn't do it during that whole day, then you have to do it at night. Just make yourself do it. Like, oh, I need to go to bed, but I didn't sit down and try to write. I'm going to open up my document and try to write 100 words or something. Just do something to do it. Like, it's kind of like, oh man, I can't get to the gym. I'm like, just drop and give me 20. It's like, it's too late to go to the gym. Get on the floor and do some push-ups or like do some sit-ups or something, man. Just do something. And then you feel like, okay, yes, I had a busy day, but I did something for my body, right? I had a busy day, but I put 100 words in. I wrote a paragraph, and that paragraph is written out, and I'm thinking about it for tomorrow. So the more you do it and the more consistent you are with it, the more you're thinking about your project in the minutes in between, the more when you sit down, you're like ready to go. You have a lot of ideas for what you're going to be doing in that. Dragon Age Inquisition was the last for me. Series died after Origins. I forgot to do all my shtick, so now that everyone's here. All right. This month's free book on the Patreon is Farewell to Once and Future Kings. So if you're already a patron, you can grab that right now for free if you're in the patrician tier. If not, you can increase your tier to patrician tier, or you could just buy the book. This is a book that was only available as part of an anthology several years ago called Pulp Rock. It's still a cool anthology. I will link the anthology in case you want to read all the other books in it. But I realized that a lot of people never read this story because it wasn't published by me. So it's not part of my normal thing. So join the Patreon. You will get that book. It's a deep cut. What to call a deep cut for this month. Something that's a little bit different. It's about musicians who are spies in space. So it's science fiction and music and a spy story and a love story is in it. So it's going to be something for everyone. Please check it out. And right now it's Patreon exclusive. You cannot buy this on Amazon except as part of that anthology, but you can get it if you are a patron. So if you're a patron, you can get that book for free as part of your membership. That's this month's free book. I thought I'd put out something that a lot of people haven't read. There's probably low chance that most of my regular readers have read that story before. So that's your opportunity to get it. If you're a patron, you can also get it through BookFunnel. There's a patron-only BookFunnel link for that. And so you can check that out. So anyway, I wanted to get that out there. Yeah, Dragon Age Origins was really great. We had a great Dragon Age game. Tons of potential for the universe, and it's been slowly squandered, unfortunately. They tried to sell Call of Duty without a campaign. Black Ops 4 didn't have one. Yeah, I guess I forgot about that. A lot of people were upset. A lot of people came for the campaign but stayed for the multiplayer. Yeah, and it just doesn't have an identity. What's the identity of it? Like, what does Black Ops mean? There was a campaign behind Black Ops and like Black Ops 2, like a Black Ops campaign. It was fun. So anyway, Call of Duty 3 was the first game I had for 360 before Halo 3 came out. Absolutely loved the campaign of it. Call of Duty 4 was the one where I felt like it really blew up for multiplayer stuff. Yeah, recession is two negative GDP quarters. Depression is 6 quarters. Yeah, so that's what they get with that, right? I've heard depression is just a period of below trend growth. Very vague indeed. It depends on who you're getting the definition from, right? But they'll go to this technical definition, even though it's like, hey, we're out of the recession because there was like a 1% growth, and it's like, I didn't feel that. I felt 20% inflation. That's what I felt. That's why the stagflation of the 70s was such a big deal, right? Is that like you had virtually no growth, but the money supply was growing. So you were basically getting poorer while the economy just barely expanded. You know, there was a difference between what's supposed to happen is like the money supply should go with the economic growth. If they're evenly matched, prices won't increase, jobs will increase, amount of products will increase, but prices won't increase. Anyway, yeah. But you'll see, like, if you track like post-war depressions, just look at post-war depressions previous to World War I, you'll see that they were way less severe than what we think of as a recession now. And they just called them depressions, you know. Jackson killed the second bank of the United States, and yet there was never a depression as bad as the one since the Fed was founded. Yep. And it was founded to try to minimize the severity of depressions. This is even before Keynes. There was this idea that like somehow we can prevent bank failures. Maybe. But it's kind of thinking that it's kind of backwards thinking, like the banks are what causes the economy to grow because they supply the money rather than like trade doing it. They don't want people to think we're in a recession or a depression, is they'll think it'll make it worse. I'm going to economic textbook definition for my MBA, but it has a real world difference for people feeling it. Yeah, that's my big point. I guess we've been in some form of depression since 2008. Maybe that's the new normal. I wouldn't say that. I'd say we haven't had strong economic growth since 2008. That's even not true. I think there's been periods of strong economic growth, even within the Obama administration. But if you're looking at the Obama years, it was like one long, protracted, bad economic period where you couldn't get ahead. Businesses were failing. Businesses were closing down. Businesses weren't expanding. I had a very strong personal economic growth starting in like 2015. The Trump years were like gangbusters for me up until 2020. I made a lot of money publishing books. Like everything was great. And I used to make, and now I look at like the numbers for like YouTube, for example, and it's like more views than I had for like a fraction of the money. Part of that is that like ads are selling for less money and more people are using ad blockers, so there's just less money to make on YouTube. And most of the people who use ad blocker aren't going to join my Patreon, even though I give out free books that no one has ever read before. Not no one, but most of you haven't read before. Powell said that this cycle is like none else because of 2020 happenings. I have my doubt. I think we are in a prolonged stagflation cycle that will continue to drastically impoverish the masses. I think so too. If you look at the S&P and divide it by money supply, we still have no ATH since 2008. Realism ages like milk. That's why good style can be timeless, like World of Warcraft. Even though it's like this, you know, here's this chair made of 8 polygons. It's like, but it holds up because it looks cartoonish. You know. To be fair, for somebody whose whole life has been spent in the DC, New York City Beltway, life has gotten better over the last 3 to 4 to 5 decades. Thus, the general disingenuity about the economy. I got here late and watching double speed regarding people complaining against Trump for not being pro-life enough. Did you hear what Ralph Reed said about what's really going on? I did not. But the Russian thing was like, these are the people trying to get you to not vote for Trump. What does David think about alcohol, marijuana, etc.? I think you should avoid them. So I am my opinion with drug use is that I actually believe it's possible to like recreationally use like most kinds of drugs, but a lot of people are incapable of doing that. And I think that there are even medical benefits to a lot of different kinds of drugs that we think of as street drugs. Like heroin is really morphine, which we give to people in hospitals. So there's a therapeutic use for it. And there could be, I could even think of legitimate uses for cocaine, as crazy as that sounds. We medicate people with methamphetamine. So clearly there's therapeutic uses for methamphetamine under some definitions. The thing about alcohol and marijuana is that the people who, I'm going to just separate each of these out, right? So alcohol has a lot of health consequences if you drink it a lot. Some people can drink it only occasionally and like drink a lot, binge drink occasionally. Most people, that's not them. They are going to be drinking habitually. And that's where it's really going to negatively impact your health and your relationships and all that kind of other stuff. So I can't do what I do and drink alcohol. Ever more than one drink. I have maybe one drink a month, you know, that's it. I just can't do it. I have to care for my children. I have to be cognitively sharp to protect my children and keep them safe. And in the event that something happens to one of my children and I need to take them to the hospital, I can't be drunk. So I have really no physical opportunity to be drunk or high and keep my children safe. I can't write when I'm cognitively impaired by a substance. So that's off the table. So all of the things that I do in a day don't mix with any substance abuse, other than maybe caffeine, like I'm drinking a caffeinated drink because I didn't sleep all night. That's a therapeutic use of a stimulant, in a way, right? Or let's just say it's a productive use of a stimulant. I'm not waking up and doing coke because I was so hungover from drinking whiskey the night before, right? That's how people tend to abuse drugs, is they are trying to use them for emotional reasons. They're trying to feel better. But yeah, I can't be cognitively impaired and be a good father. I can't be drunk and exercise. I can't be high and exercise, right? So it doesn't mix with anything I do. I have to be mentally sharp 100% of the time. Doesn't work for me. Okay, I have no downtime to do something like that. One thing I will notice is that people who are potheads have this idea that pot does not impair them nearly as much as it actually does. And there's a whole bunch of ways that I've seen this. They drive like shit. They write like crap. The music that they come up with when they're high is often awful. And you record it and you play it back for them. And they're like, this sounds awful. Like, I can't play in time. It's like, yeah, dude, you're high. When you're high and you feel happy, you think everything sounds great, even though you sound like shit. So their creative output is garbage. Their ability to operate their environment is bad. They're slower when they're using software. They're slower when they're trying to figure out anything. They can't think of what they're doing, right? If you think about somebody doing like technical jazz improvisation, it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard when you're like really stoned to do that. Now I know there's like, oh, what about these people in the 60s? It's like, I don't think their drugs were as potent, number one, like especially with marijuana. But more than that, like they practiced a lot more than you did probably. The big thing about marijuana though is that it takes the edge off. And if you want to be successful in life, you don't want to take the edge off. You want to be driven to succeed, not driven to sit on your ass and eat Cheetos all day, which is what marijuana is going to inspire you to do. It is a depressant. It's going to slow you down. It's going to make you think slower. Yeah, it'll make you laugh and feel happy, but while you're doing that, you're not accomplishing things. So if you are a person who needs to get shit done, it's just alcohol and marijuana. You're not going to have a lot of time for that, even if you are a person totally able to control that and never use it habitually. In my experience, the people who use marijuana, they use it habitually. There are very few people I've met who use it recreationally occasionally. They're out there. I'm not going to say that they're not out there. But most of the people I've met, it's like when they are a person who likes marijuana, they are doing marijuana every single day for years on end. And what does it do? Well, it takes the edge off. It stops you from being highly motivated to do things. And I've known people, it's like, I got to get stoned right now. I just feel awful, right? Their emotions are out of control when they're doing it. So yeah, I'm generally against them. It's not that people can't use them recreationally and like keep a box around it. I think some people can, but most of the people I meet can't. And if you're trying to really accomplish anything, it's going to really inhibit your ability to operate at the high mental capacity that you need to, as well as be driven to do the things that you need to. Getting stoned is not going to make you want to go hit the gym and lift weights. It's going to make you want to sit at home and eat Cheetos and play video games. For people who have time to do that, maybe that's not that bad to occasionally do that. But for me, I don't have time for that. So it's off the table. I'm playing Zelda Ocarina of Time for the first time. That's a good one. Yeah, it's smoother with the graphics and gameplay than Mario and Donkey Kong 64. I think so. And that was kind of a rough... That transition to 3D was pretty rough. I feel like Ocarina of Time holds up pretty well. I think Donkey Kong 64 I really dislike because it's just not very fun. It's like a collect the bananas game. It's not fun. But Ocarina of Time is really good. The six-pack's just virtue signal. Same with masks. Yeah. I think masks are like a religious, it's a religious thing. People do it because they have a religious sentiment towards it now. The COVIDians. I seem to get my best ideas when I'm at the gym. Plotted an entire graphic novel between sets and exercises. Excellent. Well, think about it. You're increasing blood flow. You're getting blood flowing. It also flows into your brain. I do a lot of thinking. You also have to focus in different ways when you're at the gym, so it can be a meditative experience. You can come up with lots of ideas at the gym. I think that's also why people come up with ideas in the shower. It's like it opens up your blood vessels, and your cognition just kind of goes up a little bit when you get up and start, especially compared to how you felt before the shower. The shower just kind of wakens you up a little bit, gets your brain going, at least for a few minutes. Same thing with at the gym. It's not like your blood leaves your brain. No, it goes into your brain. Your brain is operating your muscles. It needs a good supply of oxygen too. In Inquisition's defense, they had some good-looking characters, males and Cullen and Blackwall. I didn't think they were good-looking, but okay. Well, Cullen was the paladin, right? Yeah, he was okay-looking. Josephine was, I forgot about Josephine. She's okay, yeah. The shiny lips, though, were kind of weird, but yeah. Oh, ATH, all-time high, thank you. So my point is that the S&P only went up since 2008 because of money printing. Yeah, because you're tracking it according to money. So if the supply of money goes up, then that kind of throws things for a loop. There's ways to adjust for that are, I can't do it off the top of my head, but there's economists who are experts in that. They paint a little less rosy picture than what a lot of people seem to believe when they like, line goes up, line is going up. That's as much economic argument as you get from a lot of people. They're like, line goes up. How could you complain? Look, the stock line went up. It's like, I'm complaining because I can't buy a house. The neighborhood that I live in now is full of gangs, and my my groceries are 3 times more expensive and I'm getting paid the same amount. It's like, but all the stock prices went up. It's like, I'm not a billionaire. That doesn't help me. Ralph Reed has been an activist lobbyist for Christian policies for decades and a friend of Trump since 2011. He talked about some of what's going on behind the scenes this year. Okay. Marijuana legalization has made me re-examine my priors on prohibition. The things I've seen since legalization have made me more in favor of an 18th Amendment style approach. So what I experienced in California, first with medical marijuana, which really just got a bunch of people hooked on pot, to the full legalization, is that it went from a thing which was kind of underground. People did it. Some people occasionally did it. There were tons of potheads before medical marijuana came out, but they did it in their living rooms. It went from that to just open societal decay. I never found I remember one time I found underwear full of shit in my neighborhood park, and it's not a crappy neighborhood that I lived in. It was a good neighborhood, and it was a really well maintained park. And there's people getting stoned and crashing their cars into statues and stuff. Right? You drive awful when you're stoned, but they just do it out in the open. They're like, it's legal, so now it's okay. For good or ill, people associate, at least in our culture right now, legal with good. Those things should not be the same, but for good or ill, for most people it is. If it's legal, it's okay. Someone decides to show up at a park and get ripped and start bong ripping in front of my kids. What am I will get arrested if I do what they deserve to have done for them for their rudeness, right? If I go and smack them and they're too stoned to fight back, so they'll just get their ass kicked, right? But I'll go over and smack them and take their bong and smash it, I'll get arrested for destroying their property and disturbing the peace. They're disturbing the peace by blowing stinky pot smoke at my kids' park, right? Things like that. This is what you have to deal with. It's like the police will arrest me if I do something about this. They just do it in open societal decay. They don't care about it anymore. Crap on your lawn, doesn't matter. My brother shockingly became an alcoholic, not even age 25 yet. If he stops for any period of time, he gets the shakes and heart problems. That's how bad it is. Yeah, you have to go to rehab. So if you are full on alcohol, and lots of people call themselves alcoholics that aren't alcoholics, right? I had a friend who was like, I'm giving up alcohol, I'm an alcoholic. I'm like, you didn't even drink every day. You're not an alcoholic. People who are drinking all the time, it's actually dangerous to come off of it. You need to go to rehab. They wean you off of it, and then that's how you have to get sober, right? You can't just quit cold turkey. You actually can't. It can actually be dangerous. You get the shakes, yeah. There are people who may get something positive out of weed. I'm thinking someone like Dorian Yates, but for all potheads I know, weed increases their weakness. Yeah, it's more it's like, oh, here's Arnold smoking a joint somewhere. It's like, yeah, that's after he's done all the work though. And so some people have the free time to do that. I'm just telling you, with all the crap I have going on, I do not have the time to have my mental state impaired. Weed today is way too strong for me. 1990s stuff. Yeah, it's actually gotten, and this has been tracked, it's gotten multiple times more potent than it used to be. Certainly much more potent than it was in the 60s. To the point where some people who are maybe susceptible to this have developed schizophrenia and various kinds of psychosis as a response to high dosages of marijuana. So yeah, you can't overdose on it in the sense that it'll shut your heart down, but people have suffered major psychic episodes as a result of habitual or really extreme marijuana use. And this has been documented. It's not popular to talk about because we have a weed culture that doesn't want you to say anything bad about weed because God forbid, I feel bad or feel like my drug habit is somehow dangerous to me. It's dangerous. It can be dangerous to you physically. It can certainly poison your mind. It can open you up to lots of other things. It can sap your drive and your ability to do things. And it can impair your ability to drive a vehicle, just the same way alcohol can. So, some people can just go do it in their home. That's never been an issue because the cops aren't coming to go investigate you sitting on your couch smoking weed and playing World of Warcraft or something. Well, you'd probably be at your desk playing World, but you guys know what I mean. That was never an issue. The issue is now that people are bong ripping while they drive their car down the street and crashing into things. They're smoking a joint at the park while they watch little kids play. Who knows what they're thinking? Had a hell of a drummer in a band who was stoned 90% of the time. Got so bad he was consistently dragging, even with a click in his ear. Never knew what we were getting during a performance. Yeah, I've known a couple drummers that are like that. The drummers I went to high school with, every single one of them was a drug addict by the time that I graduated high school. Every single drummer was a drug addict. One of them ended up on A&E intervention. We used to call him a sleeper. His name was Ryan Braswell. I don't know what happened to him. But yeah, he showed up on A&E intervention. I hung out with him in college too. I bet you if you talk to him today, you'd be like, I don't even remember this guy. I don't remember who he was. Because he was out of it, man. And it starts with pot, but it goes from there. He ended up hooked on oxytocin or Oxycontin. Not oxytocin, that's like the Pitocin. That's the bonding chemical. Oxycontin. And he would do LSD at school, like, got nothing out of that guy, right? Eventually, yeah, it does impacts your ability to perform. It's like, I can drum while I'm stoned. It's like, imagine how much better you'd be if you didn't. It's like, but I feel anxious and bad about my feelings. That's a lot of people miss this about, like, why do musicians use drugs so much? It's like, well, you have two things that are required of you, a musician. One is like sit in a practice room and focus super hard for hours on end. The other one is go and get in front of people and be extremely extroverted for a couple of hours. Those two things are so different. And if you're inclined to be the guy who, like, I'm okay sitting in my room practicing a lot, you're probably not the guy who's going to feel good about going out on stage and, like, being super extroverted. They're two different modes, and it's hard to square them. So people will use drugs to try to make one or the other easier for them, right? They'll use alcohol to loosen up on stage and marijuana to loosen up on stage. They'll use methamphetamine to focus more when they're practicing or something like that. You know, they use combinations of drugs to get through it. I can't stand it myself. It feels like I get hit by a ton of bricks. Weed makes me act obnoxious. It makes everyone act obnoxious. And, like, no one is more pushy about their habit or defensive than a pothead. They're like, it's peace and love. Why are you against peace and love, man? Smoke it, faggot. Right? They just get angry at you for not being high. You know? 420 plays it. They get angry about it. Reed said pro-life orgs, RNC, the campaigns of Trump in unison worked out a strategy of pretending to be less pro-life than they are because RV Wade was struck down. I haven't heard this. Any politician perceived as too pro-life is literally unelectable due to a sugar rush of one-issue pro-choice voters who are overwhelming the vote in this election season. He says it will die down. Well, this is a question. I think this is like the consensus versus the populist strategy. Like, what's the more popular position? That's what Republicans are trying to get out to make sure that they don't lose things. But then there's the people who are single issue pro-lifers who are like, no, if you want to be part of the consensus for us, you have to do what we want. This is the only thing we care about. It's hard to know which way you need to go there, right? Substance use looks cool in pop culture when the person using it is acting sober, like James Bond drinking a martini. The stumbling drunk is always portrayed negatively. This is a really good point. You know? I don't think potheads are portrayed negatively, though. I think the super high pothead is portrayed as a really fun-loving, fun kind of guy. He's having a great time. Like with Dude, Where's My Car? Or, of course, I think that one's actually alcohol. But like Harold and Kumar, right? Florida Amendment 3 is going to allow recreational usage for weed. I'm fine with medical, but I'm voting against it. Most of my friends are potheads, and God, they're obnoxious when they're high. You know, like, we have lots of things for, like, public intoxication. And that needs to include, like, marijuana use for sure. But, you know, what do I know? Every block in New York City smells like weed now. Every borough, just walking behind someone smoking on the sidewalk is a daily thing. I'm sorry. But that's how it is in California, man. And, like, if you go to LA, it's just people are just in the gutter, completely blasted out of their mind on way harder drugs. But, you know, you can't do anything. Like, people have typhus. People have typhus in LA. Too many people that just lose all common sense when high. Too many mentally dependent. The big thing is, like, because of the, you know, if you had no state, this actually wouldn't be an issue. I hate to, like, promote the anarchist thing. Actually, I don't hate to at all. What am I talking about? I'll promote the anarchist thing, right? The state is what interferes with you actually policing proper use of marijuana. Because if somebody is being obnoxious when they're high, you will get arrested for enforcing any kind of consequence on that person. Do you know what I mean? So when weed is legal, it makes it illegal for you to stop someone from smoking weed obnoxiously and being annoying. Just like how if somebody shows up at the kids' park drunk, you should be able to like make them leave. Like take their, give me that martini, give me that gin you have in that sack, get the hell out of here or I'll beat you up. Right? What happens if I beat up the drunk? Probably nothing. But if I beat up the pothead, I'll go to jail. I actually remember you said if someone was smoking weed in the park back in the day, your father would probably beat them up. Yep. Years later, that still still stuck with me. Yeah, my dad would do stuff like that. He chased down kids he knew were underage because they had a keg in the back of their car and took the keg from them. He just took it away. He saw him, and when they tried to stop him, he punched him in the face, and like they couldn't do anything. Like he was 6'7" and a bodybuilder. Like this guy was huge. And so, like, yeah, he just took it away and was like, that's it. I'm taking it away from him. We would just do stuff like this. My dad was the honey badger. He was like a honey badger, man. He didn't care. It's like if the cops came and get him, he'd be like, no, they're underage drinking, so I took that away and I saved it here for you. And the cop would be like, yeah, you're cool. You know? I remember one time this kid stole a bike outside of a Dairy Queen in Lufkin, Texas. And my dad chased down this kid who stole the bike and beat him over the head with a Maglite flashlight he had in his truck. Just beat the kid senseless, and then called the police afterwards. And they came in and took the kid away, and then he gave the bike back. And he stole the bike from this poor kid with Down syndrome, too. It's just like awful. Oh, my dad was raging. Ran the kid off the road, beat him up, and the guy who stole the bike was like, teenager. It's like my dad didn't care. Cop didn't care either. Got the bike back. That's what mattered. It happened something like that. I'm trying to remember if he just. I think he jumped in our car and like ran the guy off the road. The whole thing, You used to be able to do stuff like that, but now you can't. A brother and I discussed drugs when the subject of music fell on Guru Peter Green came up. Strange. Most of these notorious beat generations had a relatively short lifespan. Yeah. They did, you're right. I've heard it was it was like a psyop, or it's like a government thing, was the whole beat thing. The only such super centenarian of note is the LSD father at 102 years. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Hardwick Bentho read it. Cool, awesome. Yeah, Alexandru's stuff is cool. I knew two guys in high school like that. You could tell they were out of it, but they got a pass with the hippie art teacher. The societal decay you mentioned shows up everywhere now. Open drug use, nobody dresses nice anymore. Road ragers are way more common. No common courtesy anymore. People stink like weed everywhere now. My nephew is a fiend. He acts strung out or angry without it. Yep. I have to agree. You get arrested for it, and if someone steals from a store, it's backwards. Yep. Sounds like your dad was a model citizen. And he was who he was. And he was a great guy. We miss him. Harrison Ford is supposedly a major pothead. I could see it with some of the way he delivered like the voiceovers in like Blade Runner. I'm like, this guy sounds like this was the theatrical edition. I'm like, this guy sounds completely uninterested and super stoned, and he could have been. One of my pothead friends went sober and started interacting with other pothead friends we hung out with. He was like, dude, was I like that when I was high? I'm like, yes. Sorry, I hate to break it to you. You were obnoxious when you were high and nobody liked it. People have a very not my problem mentality now, I feel like, even me. I have it too, and there's lines about what's your responsibility and where your realm of authority ought to be. And I go back to this, the state disrupts this a lot. where we are what should be our natural realm of authority, we're not allowed to execute it. Just as an example, there was a big house party in our neighborhood last year where, we couldn't do anything, right? Like, I could have gone and broken up there. Someone got stabbed at the party, this is like the most excitement this neighborhood has seen in years. It's the neighborhood full of like boomers and stuff, right? I could have gone down and ended that party at any time. Me and like 2 other hombres could have broken that party up by grabbing our rifles and going down there and breaking up that party. What would have happened if we'd gone down there with rifles and broken up the party? We'd have gone to jail for doing that. They were breaking noise ordinance, right? We had to wait for the police to do something. And eventually they did do it. Eventually they did break it up. But we had to wait hours. People people were having cars parked on their lawn. Okay, I got to call the police. There's someone parked on my lawn now. I don't know where they went. Come tow the car. It's like, maybe we'll tow it in 7 hours. So cars got towed. It just took a long time because all of your normal authority over your community exists with the police, and you have to just kind of rely on them to do it because you're not legally allowed to take care of it. I can't go over there and force them to stop playing loud music at 2 a.m, even though they're breaking the law and everybody's upset about it. And if you took a poll of everyone in the neighborhood, they'd be like, yeah, go kick them out. Our authority didn't exist because it exists with the police. And this goes with lots of things, right? Like, I don't want to get too personal, but there's an extended family member of mine who is a drug addict. Now, in Roman times, as the patriarch, I would have the full authority to go take away all of his drugs and manage his life for him by force because he's part of my responsibility. But I can't legally do that, or I would go to jail for taking away his legal marijuana or whatever, and he does other drugs too, but I would get in trouble for that. I would be the one getting in trouble for saving his life. Instead, what we have to do is wait for him to go to the hospital, and then pick him, or I'd have to go pick him up off the floor because no one else had enough charity in their heart to do it. I just didn't have the authority rests with the state, even though in a natural order of things, it should be with me to go take care of this family member. My hands are tied. My hands are tied for what I could do to help him because of the intrusion of the state into the natural order of things. 100 years ago, it would just be like we could have just gone and taken his alcohol and thrown it away, taken his drugs and thrown it away, made him sober up, made him do, we could have made him do those things, but you can't do it anymore. That's just the way the world is, right? It's the way it is. Does he have a right to do those things? Maybe. Does a right to destroy his life? Yeah. We also have a right to not pick up after him, but it's very hard for me to be charitable, right? Like even my ability to charitably care for him is severely impacted by the intrusion of the state. What can you even do nowadays? We live in clown world. Been in the U.S. for the first time in 20 years recently, and I told the friends I was visiting that I see so many broken souls in a broken society. It's grim. Yeah, it depends where you're at, though, right? Because the United States is super diverse. You go out into the rural areas, and you're going to see different kinds of decay than you're going to see in the cities. And some parts of the cities are still really nice, If you walk out with a rifle, cops will possibly gun you down. Yeah. Even though I'm doing their job, right? I can't do their job. Not legally. And it actually makes sense, right? You can make a really good argument why the police ought to be doing that. But the point is, in the meanwhile, we have a bunch of disruptive people driving their cars around that we can't do anything to legally. Right? Like, if you're driving your car across my lawn and I shoot your tires out or something, right? I'll go to jail. And probably nothing will happen to you. I've been a month in the hospital. I'll tell you, these nurses are good tests for societal decay. I think that most of the world is broken these days. Nothing's getting easier. I have an extended family member who's a tabletop addict, obese, constantly crying on social media about not having a girlfriend. It's a spectacle. Will not examine his 6+ hours a day with minis. That's interesting. Kind of a gamma male thing. How would you tell him to fix it? Because I actually wouldn't stop with like the minis thing. I wouldn't be like, oh, you need to stop playing Warhammer. Be like, what you need to do is turn off social media for 6 months and never react emotionally. Just don't express emotion for 6 months and see what happens. But it's a lot easier to get a girlfriend if you're not like constantly emoting at everyone. Emotional incontinence is one of the biggest turnoffs for women. So, advice for men. They often, in fact, women send these mixed messages. They say they want a man to express his emotions, and then when I express them, they get scared and run away. It's like, because they're meaning something different than what you're doing, is what it is. So when they say, I want a man capable of expressing his emotions, that means you can be like, I'm feeling very sad about the death of this person, versus just breaking down and crying, going, why is he crying all over me? It's actually frightening for a woman for a man to be emotionally incontinent. It can be a scary situation because a woman is at a physical disadvantage to a man. So if a man gets suddenly angry, there could be a fight or flight response because that man could physically harm you and hurt you. So especially being angry or raging, this is something that is not just a turn off to women. The crying is a turn off to women, but it's a turn off in that it makes them want to physically run away from you to where it's safe, because you are sending a signal that you're not a safe person to be around, that you are dangerous, right? It's all about how you control emotions and how you communicate them that creates emotional intimacy that the woman wants. She wants to know what's going on in your head. She doesn't want you to emote at her and yell at her. It's like going, I just want to be part of your emotional life, and you're like, and you scream at her, like, and then she's going to be like, and then you're like, what's wrong with you? You said you wanted me to express my emotions. It's like, I want you to explode at me and make me think that you're going to murder me with a knife, right? Men, like gamma males, don't think like this, right? I think Vox came out with an article talking about some of the specific things, right? Like, stop emoting. Stop crying on social media if you want to not be a gamma, right? No one likes that. No one likes that. There's nothing wrong with like a tabletop hobby. The question is, how do you cordon that off in your life? Like, what's the other thing that you got going on in your life? And we got to be honest, like that's also going to be very anti. What's the word I'm looking for? This is like a glasses cleaner, by the way, not lipstick. It's like for spraying my glasses. I don't know why I'm holding that. It's anti-seductive, right? You having Warhammer minis is anti-seductive. I'm like, Henry Cavill plays Warhammer. Henry Cavill has a 6-pack. Henry Cavill's a 10. He can have whatever freaking hobbies he wants, right? Henry Cavill is the top 1% of men in terms of looks and status. He can do whatever he wants, and it's not going to be anti-seductive. But even then, it's going to be anti-seductive compared to if he was doing something else, right? So if like a woman wants to date Henry Cavill, and she's like, well, he's into Warhammer, but he's also like a famous actor. He's in great shape. He looks really good. He has like perfect facial symmetry, right? She's just going to forgive that. Okay, he has a weird nerdy habit. I like to collect. I don't know what women like to collect. I like to collect stuffed animals. And he'll forgive that. He'll be like, that's a little weird for a grown woman, but it's okay because you're a 10. Right? So the better looking you are, the more you can get away with that. But the lower you get on the scale, the more you have to think about what total package you're going to bring to a woman. And playing Warhammer for 6 hours a day or working on painting miniatures is going to lower your score. So if you're in terms of looks, if you're a 5 and you are really into Warhammer, you're like a 2 now to a woman, right? If you're a 7 and you're really into Warhammer, you're dropping to like a 4. It's like almost parabolic. So it's like the 10 doesn't really drop, or maybe it's like an S curve. But like, if you're not, if you don't have those other things going on, you have to think of that. It's like playing video games. Like, I love to play video games. Like, I know that Dan Bilzerian plays video games because I've been to his house. He has video games, right? And I have friends who play video games with him, and I'm pretty sure I've played Call of Duty with Dan Bilzerian. But you never see him playing video games on like social media. And he's not going to bring a woman over and play Call of Duty in front of her because he knows that that's anti-seductive. That's just a thing you do when you're relaxing, when you don't have anything else to do, right? Whatever. Doesn't matter, right? It's just like it's an amusement. So if you're into video games, that's fine. But like, if you brought a woman over, hopefully that's not the thing you're going to emphasize is your video games, because it's anti-seductive. And women understand that, like, oh, you're spending time on this hobby that's not improving you. It's purely a leisure activity. And if everything else is going fine, then they don't care about the leisure activity. But if there's anything else that's missing, like you're a little overweight and you're playing a lot of video games, obviously you should be spending some of that time dieting and exercising so that you can improve yourself, right? You're not making a lot. You're a pizza delivery boy and you play a lot of video games. It's like you should be working harder. Now that's very, women are. The point is that it's anti-seductive. It's what package you're bringing. You want to be good looking and successful and in shape and blah, right? So if you have all those things at a high level, then yeah, you can have hobbies and women actually don't care about it. But it's what that thing is in combination with. You're fat, obese, and you do Warhammer. You're a one. You're a one, dude. You're like not human anymore. Harrison Ford's gone honey badger these days. In interviews, he bluntly calls interviewers' questions stupid. Openly admits that taking roles he sees as stupid for money. Awesome. What do you think about the opium epidemic in rural areas? Causes or solutions? Well, the causes are the same causes as everywhere else, which is despair. Rural despair is profound, and it is a little bit different than urban despair. Right? The rural despair tends to be more hidden, but you have to think about why people move to cities. They move to cities because there's more opportunity in cities. There's more opportunity to meet people. There's more opportunity to do business. There's more opportunity to succeed. There's more things to do in cities. There's more fun. If you're out in the country and you can't, if there's not a woman that you already have, you're probably not going to meet one in the country. It's easy to be lonely, right? It's easy to be poor in the country, have nothing going on. There's always been substance abuse problems in the country. And I lived in rural California. We had major methamphetamine issues in rural California. So it's going to be there, but it's always the same cause, which is despair. The person is broke. They don't have anything going in their life. They can't, their girlfriend breaks up with them, and that begins the cycle of using a substance for emotional relief. Maybe psychiatric medications would help those people. I don't know, but almost always the causes are despair. Addiction, more and more from what I read about addiction, is people are looking at it as a set of behaviors, not just something that afflicts you, like you just get hit with heroin addiction, but rather the heroin addiction is an attempt to solve some other problem that isn't being solved with your life. Like you can't fix it in your life. And I see this for like, why do young men play so many video games instead of wanting to go on dates with women? Well, it's like the video game provides them what their life doesn't have, which is meaning, advancement, status in some cases. Like if you're in a major World of Warcraft guild and you have the peen on your server, I'm thinking back in time a little bit, it solves the problem of status. You're the top guy on the server, even because you can't advance in your job, you can't advance in society, your business can't grow. The video game gives you an opportunity to have those things. So yeah, I'm not sure what the solutions are to the opioid epidemic. It's just an extension of other drug use. There's a methamphetamine, and you have to solve the despair issue. That's really hard to do. It's just really hard. Like I don't have all the answers, and I can't even begin to think of them. I'm not an expert in that, but I know it's a problem, and it's been a problem for a long time. A lot of the veteran actors are in the I don't give a F mode now. Yeah, it's also very difficult to help someone who's mentally ill. As long as they can still advocate for themselves, the law gives them a lot of leeway. Very true. You pretty much have to wait until a crisis happens. Yeah, you have to wait for them to be hospitalized. You have to wait for them to be on death's door, and then maybe you can begin some sort of intervention for their psychiatric issues. It's the problem with homeless people, right? It's like you have to wait for them to commit a crime and then go to jail and then receive treatment, and then they get better for a little while with, on their meds, and then you put them on the street, and then they just go back to doing drugs because the drugs work better than their meds as far as getting rid of the issues they have. They just end up back in the same place. Cheat code to dump a woman, trauma dump on them. Or you can just say, get out. It's not you, it's me. I can't deal with it. Or I'm looking, you know what? I've had a religious conversion. If you, there's lots of ways to break up with a woman that kind of get you out of it without her feeling too bad. You can be sensitive and caring without being a weenie. I agree. Who cares what women think? People who want to know women, people who want female companionship, people who want to be married, it matters. Lots of people care about it. Most men care about what women think, or they wouldn't do what they do. The guy who doesn't care what women thinks is probably out like in the mountains riding mules and killing deer or something. When they asked Harrison Ford what it took for him to play the Red Hulk, he responded, "What did it take? It took not caring. It took being an idiot for money," which I've done before. Warhammer 40K. Right on the money, yep. A woman also sees... So, a woman can quickly evaluate a man's material signals as signals, even if a man doesn't think of them that way. So a woman can come into a man's home, and if he's got... Let's say he has a room full of toys. Why shouldn't he have the toys? He can spend his money on whatever he wants. Yes, I agree. But if you're thinking about the seduction area, like what does that signal to a woman? Oh, he's spending his excess money on trinkets. He must not have a whole lot going on. Is he going to spend his money on toys or on me? These toys aren't for kids. What's going to happen if I marry him? What's he going to be spending his money on? Is he wise with his money? So basically sends the signal that you're not really wise with your money. Even if you have a big toy collection, you're probably pretty wise with your money because you were able to save and acquire the money and do well enough to buy the toys. But what it says to them is like, you're just misallocating your resources. Like you're spending your money on toys instead of other better things that are more useful and more attractive to a woman, right? Than just toys for yourself. It's kind of the 40-year-old virgin thing. It's anti-persuasive as far as getting a woman to be attracted to you, or anti-seductive, I guess. You're spending a lot of your time doing this tabletop game. Why aren't you doing other things? Like, what other things should I be doing? Is what a man asks. Or why shouldn't I just do the things that I enjoy? Whereas there's other things you could do, right? Imagine, I don't know, I hate to like think of myself as ideal partner, but like come in to, if I was single, you come into my house, it'd be pretty Spartan, right? I'd have my computer and my bed and a bunch of guitars. Now, are the guitars toys? Like, what do you do? Well, I'm a musician. These are my tools, right? And then what do you do in your free time? I work out and I write books. And it's like, that sends a signal that at least he's driven. But if I wanted to send a signal that I was economically successful, it's like I would have spent that money on a good car and a bigger apartment or a bigger house to show I have a lot of resources to provide for children. Like women instinctively will pick up on something like that versus I'm spending my resources on guitars and stuff. The only thing that might be attractive about that would be like, oh, he's driven. He has like a business where he like writes books, and that's impressive, right? It's impressive that he spends his free time writing books. But I also spend my free time like playing video games and reading books and stuff like that. I'm just a normal person. I have leisure activities too. But if the leisure activity, it looks like the leisure activity is taking center stage, that's going to be anti-seductive. Regardless of what it is. But toys, especially nerdy stuff, it's like, what are my girlfriends going to think about you? Think about that too. My girlfriends might think that this guy I'm dating with all these guitars is cool because he's kind of a bad boy with guitars, right? And it's like, but they're not going to think the guy with the room full of Warhammer 40K minis is cool. They're not going to think of that at all. Women like to collect pretty things. Don't overthink it. It's true. You can get away with a lot if you were hot. Absolutely. I never told women I play video games or D&D when I dated. It just said when we were I went fishing and golfing. See, I don't lie about it, but like, you know. Oh yeah, I played a board game with some friends. They wanted to get together. The 10 gets a mark against for the future when things grow cold. My lady watches anime, tries to get me to watch it, but even admits if I was big into anime, she would think of it as a turnoff. That's true. And there's different degrees. Like if you're too into anything, it can actually be a turnoff. Because it's like why are you obsessed with that weird thing? I don't understand it. Step 1, be attractive. Step 2, don't be unattractive. That's also a good one. You know. But the thing is, you have to know, like some of you, in fact, most of us are never going to be a 10. Like I can get completely shredded. I still won't be a 10, right? Like my hairline's, it's not terrible. It's not really like Norwood level yet, but you know, it's like I'm old, right? I got gray hair, gray beard. Even though I had a great body, I don't have like the facial symmetry and structure to be like, you know, really good looking. It's okay. Women are actually looking for, once they get to know you, that's why it's really important. If you're ever trying to like, I don't know, get on a date with a woman, you have to get her to know you enough to view you as a person and not as a picture of a man, right? That's just how it works, right? You have to think of like yourself as a package. You want to be as attractive as possible. For most men, that means lose weight. So you will raise your attractiveness level tremendously by just losing weight. And I've been there because I went from like obese to like not shred. I don't know if I called myself shredded, but I had like a 6-pack, you know, I was in good shape. So I went from obese to that, and it was like night and day. It's like all of a sudden women are just from my perspective, throwing themselves at me, right? When I was like 29, I was like, what is all this female attention about? It's like my attractiveness level went way up. I went from like a 4 to like an 8. And then it was like easy. Everything was easy after that, right? So yeah, you can lose weight and just get in shape. Mostly it's body fat. So you don't need to worry too much about strength training. I mean, you should strength train, but like lower your body fat is the main thing. The lower your body fat is, the better looking you will be as a man. And it's actually one of the hardest things to do. If you've never dieted down to like 10% body fat before, you know, bodybuilders are like 6%. So people think that's what you need to be. 10% is pretty diced for like most guys. It is very hard to get that low, and it takes a long time and a very strict adherence to a diet in order to get really lean. And I'm not lean right now. I'm like 20% body fat, according to like my Samsung watch. So I got to lose some weight for like insurance purposes, actually. But anyway, so I'll be working on that this year, I think. Yeah, if you want to raise your attractiveness level, just like lose weight. And I noticed it in videos too. People are like, oh man, you lost weight, you look better. It's like, I actually didn't lose weight. And I'll do a video on this. I lost my moon face. I stopped using Flonase. So Flonase made me get this face fat. I had face fat from using Flonase. And I could show like a before and after. I just stopped using it. And a couple months later, the fat just disappeared off my face and it looked like I lost 40 pounds. Now and that's like, here's 2 pictures. I'm 230 pounds in both pictures. Oh, but you look so much thinner. It's like I stopped taking Flonase, right? It's like I was even, actually, I think it's like, here is a picture of me at like 220 and one at 230, and I look thinner at 230 because I stopped using the Flonase. Right. I'm a 4, but I'm a photographer who makes women beautiful, so that makes me an auto 8. My poor wife. Well, you're married, so you're good enough for the wife. And that's the thing, right? Once you're married, this whole idea of like, what number are you? How to seduce, that goes out the window. It's all about maintaining the relationship. And so there's a total different thing between attracting a woman and keeping her around. Those are 2 totally different things. So keep that in mind. What kind of nerd fest is this? Keep these hobbies to no more than about an hour a day. I think that's probably a good rule for just leisure activities that aren't like self-improving leisure activities, like working out or something, right? Is like, you got to keep it. Even then, like if your leisure activity is fitness, it's kind of hard to do fitness for more than an hour a day and get a whole lot extra out of it. You can, like there's people who are natural athletes who train like 2 to 4 hours a day, but they're like, high level, you know. So yeah, an hour a day. No one cares if you're watching TV for an hour a day. A woman's not going to care. Oh yeah, I watched Game of Thrones. She's not care. Oh yeah, I sat down and played a game for an hour or whatever, and then I went to sleep. Right? It's about if everything else is working, that doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Like your leisure activities are not a turnoff. What's a turnoff is that like you're playing video games and you're not really successful. You know, if you weren't really successful, but you were working your butt off and you were shredded, then it wouldn't be a thing as much, you know. One thing that doesn't get emphasized enough is when it comes to marijuana is the most strains available now are way stronger than what was around in the 1960s. Yes. Like way more potent, way more THC, more all the other cannabinoids too, to the point where some people actually have like mental breaks because of the marijuana. It's actually in the literature. It's something that's been noted. Yep. I believe scripture says hopeless is to be a sin. I don't know about that off the top of my head. But I think that's the problem. So how do you gain hope? Like, I can't answer that. But usually if you have a meaning or purpose that you are working towards, that will alleviate many feelings of despair. You have a goal that's worth achieving, boy, that can change your life. Any goal. If you go to church and if you go to church and like your priest or your pastor's like, we really need someone to do this, and you go and you do that, that could be like, this is like a thing that matters to people. I want to do it and I feel encouraged to do it and I feel like I matter to do it. And I will give up things to do that, including substances. You know, I've known people that were drug addicts and they could completely quit it if they just had some way to help other people. They were full of hope because there was hope in those other people that they were doing something that matters. For a lot of people, they feel like nothing they're doing is mattering. You know, it's hopeless. It's hard to fix that. I don't have like an easy way to do it because like I feel like my work is full of meaning and purpose kind of by default. So it's hard for me to like look across and be like, how do I give that person hope? Just find a charity, find something to do that matters, you know. Is there any way to get informal rules enforcement to scale for modern communities and states, or are things just too big and need to be broken down for vigilantism to work? I don't know about that. I think, you know, the closer the government is to the person, the more efficient it is for these sorts of things. Like the truth is, like I'm being slightly facetious by saying like I could have broken up the party, and it's like, would I really want to do that? If there was no state, then I would have to do that, obviously. But eventually the police came and did that. It's just we had a long lag for the most of the people who lived in the neighborhood. They wanted it fixed a little bit quicker than that. But the police, they have to decide how they're going to allocate their resources for a broader community. It's not just our little neighborhood. There's lots of other communities, and there's other things they have to take care of in those communities. And they have to make the best decisions possible for how they're going to allocate their resources at any given moment. They can't send 20 officers over to clear out a party if they're dealing with an armed robbery somewhere or like a car theft, right? It's a lower priority, and we got to be real about that. We have specialists, and law enforcement is a specialty. That's how it is. Can't forget about all the ADA protections. This is why I have conversations on the initial date courtship. Avoid all the drama by asking important questions right off. Yeah, and also, if you pay attention to like pickup artists, they give you a lot of clues that you don't have to use these things exploitively. It's like you want to get the woman to ask you personal questions. Yes, that's good. That gets her to know you and be interested in who you are and to see you as more than just your physical body and whatever signals are on your body, your clothes you're wearing. And to be more attracted to the more interesting aspects of you. And you have to decide what those really need to be. So there's nuggets of wisdom in there that you don't have to necessarily use for evil, right? You can use them for good. It's to get, and then to know that woman and make decisions about her. I'm out. I'm a misogynist. This ain't for me. You can, but like even the people who are misogynists are interested in what women think because they still want to be with women. Historically, people left family and friends in the country to move to the big city and make money. Now cities are unaffordable even with a good job, and the people feel isolated and alone. Yeah. They don't know their neighbors, and you can't know your neighbors. Your neighbors speak a different language. It sucks. I had some of that in the Afterglow. Where is it? It's over here. So yeah, in this book, I had some of that stuff in here. And one called Iron and Clay. So I have a story in here called Iron and Clay. You can actually, I think, listen to it for free on YouTube. It's called Iron and Clay, and it's about people are so different from each other. The idea of the man cave came up because men learned to hide their toys and games from their girlfriends because they found it unattractive. I'm trying to become an animator. Am I lady repellent? I don't think so at all. I think being able to have a high skill thing that impresses a woman is great, but you have to look at it as where's that fit in the package? You know, are you successful? Do you have like some prospect for success somewhere else, or do you have a job and you're able to make money? Are you working on your health and your fitness? Are you reasonably attractive? Do you try to what other signals are you sending out? Because that could be a great thing. It's like, oh, I really want to be an animator. I'm working hard on this. That could be very attractive. Yeah. Getting buff can certainly raise you a few points. It's not even getting buff. It's like get lean. You will look buffer when you're leaner. Abe Martinson, be fit, be clean, be social, dress well, don't be broke. Do your best of those. Yeah, eat clean. Track your calories. It's so hard that most guys just juice to get there. Yes, and that's true as well. Few are dedicated enough to get there. That's why I say it's like it's a leanness thing. It's diet. Even then, it's very hard. It's a lot easier to get lean on steroids because of the higher testosterone. You end up with keeping more muscle and building more muscle, which raises your metabolism, which makes it easier to eat less, right? And in fact, you can eat more than a natty and still lose weight because your metabolism's so much higher. And a lot of guys don't just use steroids. They're using all kinds of other things to get lean for a show. They'll use clenbuterol, which is a stimulant. And the stimulant works, it makes you just move more. It raises your metabolism, so you're burning off more calories. They'll use ephedra. They'll use caffeine. They'll use a bunch of stuff like that to keep their metabolism as high as possible so their body will burn off the fat. The anabolic steroids will help keep the muscle on so your body won't catabolize that too much. And then they'll even use thyroid hormone. So a thyroid hormone, it only works for a short time, but bodybuilders will use it. Different kinds of thyroid hormone, like T3 or T4. I'm trying to remember the chemical name of it, but they'll use that for a while, and that will basically give you hyperthyroidism for a couple days, and then your body adjusts. So you have to do it up and then bring it back down. But then you can burn off that last bit of fat. It's really hard to get bodybuilder lean. Like the 6% body fat that you see it shows, unbelievably difficult to get. For a regular guy, you should just try to focus on getting to like 12%. 12%, you're going to look really lean to most people. 10% is like you're ripped. It's really hard to get that lean natural. I say having done it and not been able to maintain it. It's one of the hardest things that I can think of doing in terms of discipline was getting lean. Absolutely. And the hardest thing to maintain because your willpower breaks down. And after a while, you're like, oh man, I feel bad. I'm low energy. I just need some ice cream. And it's not even ice cream. It's like you eat a whole bag of cereal or something. And there goes that. Yeah, keep fit. Don't do unpredictable things. Know how to fix things. Women know. Yeah, and the thing, if you're handy, why is handiness attractive to women? Well, you got to think about the domestic package. Like, oh, this guy can fix cars. He can fix my car. He can take care of me. If something's wrong, he can fix it. I feel secure with that. So being handy is attractive to women. It really is. And if you're not handy, then if you're the kind of guy that's like, this not working, I'll call a plumber and pay for it right now. Then it's like, whoa. He's taking care of business. Even by paying, you can be taking care of business. Quitting soda is an excellent start on a weight loss journey. I thought I couldn't go a day without it, then I gave it up for a week and was shocked by the sweetness after trying it again. Yeah. Sugar soda, yeah, don't drink your calories. Don't drink your calories. If you're one of those people that drinks a lot of orange juice, you're gonna have to give it the orange juice. I'm not giving out a bunch of diet tips. Like, there's channels you can watch, all the fitness channels. They're gonna give you all the best advice for how to get shredded and ripped and stuff. And they've been, they're personal trainers. They know how to do all that. I'm just giving you my experience. It's hard to do. Yeah, being an animator is very skilled. It's very high skill. It's very hard to do that. What do you think of White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane? I like the sound of it. I don't remember it. Sorry. I'm sure I've heard it, but I don't remember it. All my army buddies who juiced look like shit now. Oh, well, that's that. So, that's the other thing about juicing. It can go away after a while. I think the rule of thumb for most things is you keep about half the gains. That's why when you see a natty, he looks natural and unique among the juicers. And even the military guys that don't look as fit will outclass them. Functional fitness over just show muscle. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. Yeah, I don't go zero sugar. I still have sugar in the diet, but I've heard as you get older, you actually need to reduce your sugar more. So that's something to keep track of. That's something I've been hearing is everybody as they get older starts to move into being more insulin resistant, which means you really do need to lower your sugar as you get older. It's just part of aging. Your insulin system doesn't work as good as it did when you're a kid. When you're a kid, you could eat sugar and just burn it off. When you're an adult, you end up with high blood sugar. Steroids can have some unsightly effects, yeah. Dwayne Johnson wound up needing breast reduction surgery, and it's rumored that steroid side effects might be why. Yeah, so if he had gynecomastia, what some guys do now is they remove the glands, so you can never get it from juicing. But it's actually breast tissue. It's not. Let's see my chest here. It's not like just fat on the breast. It's like the actual. Males have it, but we don't have a bunch of estrogen. So that tissue doesn't respond a lot, except in some cases where there's hormonal imbalances due to puberty, or in this case, anabolic steroids. So that comes from is that you have aromatase, which is this enzyme that'll convert a certain amount of your test into estrogen. So as you use higher than normal amounts of testosterone, your body will start converting that into estrogen. And then you have estrogen receptors on your nipples, right? We have the same kind of tissues that women have, but our hormones, so they'll start responding to that. That's why a lot of bodybuilders will take an aromatase inhibitor, which will stop that. So it'll stop the test from turning into estrogen. And there's a lot of debates about how much you should use or how much estrogen you should allow to your body. But if you take the glands out, you take the tissue out that's going to respond to that, you can juice as much as you want, and you're not going to get the gyno anymore. But you might get other things, right? So anyway, guys who are really into the pharmacology of using steroids, it's not me. Maybe the More Plates, More Dates channel. If you guys are interested in going deeper on that, he probably has some articles on it, or some videos specifically on where gynecomastia comes from and what kind of surgeries they use to remove it, and what bodybuilders will do to avoid that. I don't recommend anybody use steroids because there's a lot of physical complications to using steroids, but I understand why a lot of men use them, especially now. The desire to be as attractive as possible. Society's standards for male attractiveness have gone up significantly over the last few decades to where it's a standard that is really difficult for most men to meet in terms of fitness, especially with our modern lifestyle that tends to be more sedentary, less active. And even then it's here's this, here's all these guys from the 1950s, and notice none of them are fat. I'm none of them are big either, right? My grandpa wasn't fat. I remember pictures of him and my grandma from the beach, and they looked great in 1948. However, he was considered a big, ripped guy in 1948, and he's way small by modern standards. There's no muscle on him. He's not fat, but he's not, he's not like a big jack bodybuilder. You know what I mean? So when we look at the bodies of the past, yeah, they're less fat, but they're also less strong. So the modern male standard is like more like a classical statue where it's like heavily muscled and lean. That's very difficult to do. Right? Very difficult to do. I see my daughter dancing around there. Dancing around behind me. It's fun. Anyway, I'm about out of time. I'm a little over time, actually. So let me link everything again. Okay. Patreon, you get Farewell to Once Future Kings is this month's book. Since most people haven't read it. It's your chance to join up, get that for free. Make sure you are subscribed to the Substack. I come out with an article every Thursday. And I will do that for the foreseeable future. If you want to buy Pulp Rock, I think it's a great anthology. It has some great stories in it. And I really think it's cool. Kindle price is 99 cents right now. So you can get my book for 99 cents, or you can buy it from me, or join my Patreon and get part of it as the Patreon right now. So you can grab that. And yeah. So yeah, that's the bonus for patrons. And yeah. I haven't seen pictures of Eugene Sandow. Yes, yeah, Sandow. Now Sandow looks great, but even by modern standards, people are like his chest is small, blah blah blah. He's lean though. So if we look at Eugene Sandow, one of the things you'll notice is that he's strong and lean, but that's not typical, right? People were skinny back then, but they weren't as strong as him. You know. Modern bodybuilding takes that to like a wholly different level. Eugene was probably natty. I think they didn't have hormones back then, so I think he was natty. I think he was a natural guy. He looks good. All right, that's it. I don't think there's anything else to link. What else is there? Patreon, Substack. Oh, the music channel. I'll have more music coming on the music channel. Taking a short break from it right now as far as new stuff goes, to kind of think about what my next phase is going to be for that. But anyway, check that out, and I'll see you all next time. Have a great day, and yeah, take it easy.